I've re-uploaded this video because a previous image that I used was copyrighted. So my deepest apologies.
And I think you and I probably are both on the same page as well. We don't see CRT being taught in our schools right now. It's a course that is taught in law school. No, I don't think it should be taught in our schools, yeah.
I find the tweet a little bit misleading. I don't think Beto O'Rourke is fighting against critical race theory, but it's an important step. Nonetheless, the winds of change are upon us, and we need to discuss a little bit what is critical race theory and why is this a big conversation right now, and it's going to definitely be a major one as the United States is going into the midterms. Now, if you guys remember, in 2020 when the lockdowns happened, a lot of professors were terrified with the fact that now students will have to do their lessons online because they were worried that parents might actually listen to what is being taught. And a lot of parents did listen, and they were incredibly shocked at what they were hearing. The children were being told that America is evil, it's an inherently racist country. Teachers were punishing students who didn't say that the police is evil and it's persecuting American citizens. And all of this got parents concerned, and they started looking into it a little bit more, and they realized that in the past there have been cases at schools where students were segregated based on racial characteristics. People were told that they are being evil just because they are of a particular race. So these parents, they don't really understand the ideology or what is going on, but they do look at the effects and they know that, hold on a little bit, like something is wrong here. This is not the type of education that I received. I don't see how this type of education can further someone's life. And they got a little bit more interested in their children's education. And they were shocked to be met with disdain from some of the teachers who were posting on social media saying that parents should just shut the fuck up because they're not the experts. They don't know how to educate students. It's the role of a teacher to educate the student, which goes in accordance with what they're teaching. Like, for example, if you look at some of the anti-racist literature, they say that in order to abolish whiteness, the teacher has to become like the second parent. So the role of the parent is to help the child understand the world around him until he goes to school, and at school the teacher becomes the parent, right? Like the child belongs to the state because the teacher is a representative of the government in the public school system, and then the teacher is the one that actually gets to educate the child on social issues, on morals, on everything, right? So obviously parents didn't like that because they were never consulted. So they started protesting, they started pulling their kids away from schools, to which the teachers' unions reacted very violently by calling the parents terrorists and using their connections that they have with politicians in order to crack down on the parents. But this only worked in getting even more parents involved, and now it's a bipartisan issue. Now there are a lot of left-wing and right-wing parents who are coming together and they're discussing this, and they're considering it a major concern to the point where they're willing to vote for anyone, regardless of political affiliation, that is willing to fix this problem. So the question is, like, what is critical race theory, right? Because this is how a lot of journalists initially tried to fight against the parents who noticed that something was going wrong at schools, but if they can't actually put a definition on it, if they can't articulate it 100%, it means they're wrong, they're crazy, they should just shut up. But obviously that's not how the world works, right? Like, for example, most people know that you should never put a fork in an electrical outlet. Now, the same people would probably not be able to explain to you what electricity is the same way a physicist can. They probably don't know how it's made, or the electrical wire that goes through the wall and what happens in your body when you get electrocuted. They probably can't explain any of that. They can't articulate it like a scientist can. But that doesn't mean that they are wrong when they say that you shouldn't put a fork in an electrical outlet. In other words, there is this logical fallacy that people assume that just because a person can't explain something like a scientist accurately, that they must be wrong. No, like there is a lot of knowledge that people have that they can't explain. Like, for example, I also don't understand why is it that when I press the on button on my computer, it turns on. Like, I don't know the connection that's happening there. I don't know how the message is being sent to the processor to be turned on. But that doesn't mean that if I tell someone else who wants to turn on the computer, hey, press the on button, that I'm wrong. So, moving away from that, I just want to point out that if anyone tells you that just because you can't accurately define something, then clearly you are wrong not to want that thing to be done to you, is something that I find bizarre. Especially since I think most humans operate on this level of intrinsic knowledge that they can't really express, but they have a fundamental understanding whether it's good or bad for them. But anyway, moving away from that, what is critical race theory? Let's simplify it to the point where it's easy to remember and you'll be able to have this conversation with anyone on a forum, on Twitter, with a family member. When they ever ask you, it's like, okay, but what is CRT? Why are you against it? And your definition should be like this. Critical race theory is a belief system which claims that the United States is a fundamentally evil country built on systemic racism. And the purpose of these racist systems is to advantage people having whiteness over any other person. In other words, racism in the United States never went away, it just became hidden. And today, America is suffering from a grand conspiracy where people are conspiring with each other to create these racist systems without knowing that they are doing this, without knowing that there are other people doing this with them. And the way to stop this is to wake them up. It's where the word woke comes from. It's like you need to be awoken to this grand conspiracy that is going on where people are having white privilege without knowing that they're having white privilege, and you need to tell them that they're having it so they can check their privilege and they can stop the oppression, and then you go through equity and blah, blah, blah. So, whatever. Why is this a bad thing? Well, it's a bad thing because how can you be patriotic? How can you love your nation if you believe that your nation is evil? Why would anyone want to join the military? Why would anyone want to defend their neighborhood? Why would anyone want to do something for their community out of charity if they believe that their entire community is a bunch of conspiring racists? And again, like teaching this to children who don't have the tools and the context in order to offer counter arguments, I can see why parents are a little bit upset. And as I mentioned before, it is becoming a bipartisan movement. I noticed that the movement is also very diverse. There were a lot of black mothers being absolutely livid that their sons or daughters were being told that they are victims, that they're being oppressed. So all of this is now creating a huge backlash to the point where Democrats, they're having to backpedal a little bit. Now, when they say CRT isn't being taught in schools, in some cases they might be correct, but think about it this way. Like, I'm pretty sure every single American wouldn't want Nazism to be taught in schools either. But just because Mein Kampf wouldn't be part of the curriculum, that doesn't mean that if the teachers would all be members of this ideology and they would allow this ideology to affect the way they're teaching, that parents wouldn't be just as upset. And this is pretty much what is happening here in most cases. So the critical race theory literature might not be on the desk of students, even though in some cases I have seen that it is. But even if it's not, then the teachers themselves who believe that, white people have privilege and they're oppressing the black students and, we now need to segregate based on race. Yeah, I can see why parents are still pissed off and why it's a big issue. Just like the left doesn't want racist cops, I guess parents, and this is bipartisan, don't want people that think that their country is evil. Especially since a lot of these parents, if not them, then maybe their grandfathers or great-grandfathers came from all around the world and traveled to the United States. Because they appreciate the American way of life and they appreciate what America did for them. So it is not only insulting, but at the end of the day, it's also a false ideology which can be easily debunked. And if you want proof that it can be easily debunked, look how much censorship they need. Look how much they need to lie about it. Look how they need to create safe spaces and inclusive spaces in order to stifle any type of conversation. So and how they constantly try to gatekeep, and they lie and they slander the parents, sicking the FBI on them and threatening them with FBI investigations. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Any ideology that's true doesn't need this crazy level of enforcement. So let me know what you guys think, and don't forget to tune in for This Week is Stupid. It's a great episode. It's going to be released in a couple of hours, and I'll see you guys then. Take care.